It's Father Vogel. We continue our reading of St. Francis de Sales' Introduction to the Devout Life. The previous chapter we looked at attachment to venial sin and how we need to remove those attachments to those even small offenses against God if we want to grow in the devout life. And so now in chapter 23, he again looks at something else we must seek to purify within ourselves if we are to grow in holiness. And this time we must purify ourselves from the attachment to useless and dangerous things. So these are going to be things that in and of themselves are not necessarily bad, but can be bad in certain contexts. So he says, games, dances, feasts, pompous celebrations, plays are in no way evil in themselves. Rather, they are indifferent, since they can be used for good or evil. Nevertheless, such things are dangerous, and to be fond of them makes them a greater danger. So it's to become attached to, entertainments, worldly pleasures, things that don't necessarily lead us away from, aren't necessarily sinful, but aren't really leading us toward God, that can distract us, in fact, from Him. Those things, too, we want to be wary of. He says that even though you are free to play games and dance, adorn yourself, attend decent plays, enjoy dinners, yet to have a strong liking for such things is an obstacle to devotion. Especially if our affection toward them is usurping our affection toward God, that can end up being the issue. So he says it's not wrong to do such things, but it is wrong to have an attachment to them. It is a pity to sow in our hearts such useless and foolish attachments. They take place of good desires and prevent the energy of our spirit from being directed to good inclinations. So if we're putting all of our energy into all these other things, maybe they're hobbies or pastimes, but we become so attached to them that really they take the majority of our time, and we don't have time to do the good things of God because we're doing all these other things that, while not bad, are not sinful in and of themselves, are taking us away from the Lord. Then he says we want to not be attached to them. He gives a couple examples that are not quite as helpful now, I think, but I'll give an example from my own life. So I recognized in college that I was becoming very much attached and overcome with playing foosball way too much. And so I decided during Lent of that year to give up foosball during Lent. And it was very hard because I was attached to it, and some of my other friends who we play with were attached to it too. We were getting way too competitive though, and it wasn't being conducive to holiness. And so in giving it up, at the end of the 40 days, I could come back to it and enjoy it, but not be as attached to it. And so now that's really where it is in my life. I enjoy it, but it is something that doesn't consume me or take all the time or all that effort that I had placed to it in the past. There is an analogy he uses that I think is helpful. He says, little children are fond of chasing butterflies with great eagerness. No one finds it wrong, since they're only children. But is it not laughable, or rather pitiful, to see grown-up persons who are so eager to have such fondness for worthless trifles as are the things I have mentioned? These things, besides being useless, put us in danger of becoming undisciplined and unbalanced as we run after them. So that's the danger of these things that they're not in and of themselves bad, but they can be distractions for us if we become too attached to those things. He says, for these reasons, my dear Philothea, I tell you that we must purify ourselves from such attachments. Even though these actions are not always contrary to devotion, nevertheless, the attachments always cause damage to it. So to more easily be free to follow God, we want to be we don't want to love even the good things of the world more than we love the Lord. God bless.